All right, so how we're going to run today, if you weren't able to join us yesterday, I'm going to speak for about 10 or 15 minutes about how to answer our question of the day, which is tell me about a time you worked with non-technical colleagues. I'll then share how you can practice this in Riveter and then open it up for any questions. So if anyone has questions, feel free to drop them in throughout the chat throughout the event, and I'll talk about them as I see them. And if you have something you want to say for the end, either about how to answer a specific question, general interview tips, or anything else, that'll be a great place, a great time to ask them. And then I'll share what we're going to do tomorrow. Tomorrow's going to be very fun. We're actually going to have a recruiter join us tomorrow. There's another recruiter joining us Saturday as well, both to give some tips about the specific question of the day tomorrow, but also to share some open jobs that they have that they're hiring junior level engineers for and how you can apply. So it'll be very fun. So let's get into it. First, I want to share a few tips from watching some of yesterday's videos. And I'll do this every day just as I watch your videos so we can always improve. So from yesterday's videos, there are really two things that I took out. The first is some of your answers were very short. I saw some people take 30, 40 seconds on an answer. As much as possible, you want to make an interview a conversation. And it can only be a conversation if you give some specific stories and if you really, give back in the conversation. If you give me a story that I can latch onto and say, ooh, I thought that was really interesting, Scott. Let me ask you about that. Right? If you give me some generic cookie cutter answer that's short, it's going to be very difficult for me to say, ooh, Manuela, tell me more about that, because you just didn't tell me much to begin with. So give yourself a little bit of running room, experiment, try it out. Maybe speak a little bit slower or dive more into the story. And remember, story wins all. So try to get your answers in that 1 to 2 minute range. 90 seconds is a good rule of thumb, which gives you enough time to tell a good story, but not so much time that you bore me. And try to make it a conversation with specificity in your stories. So avoid some of that generalness that you might be inclined to give. And that's where details matter, right? You want to give details. You want to be specific about your stories so folks can really connect. But here's why practicing is important. When you're speaking, your words matter, and you never know what is going to be remembered. You don't know what is the single word that's going to confuse somebody, make somebody nervous, make somebody uncertain, give somebody a reason to say no, right? And I talk a lot about this with people I interview. There was somebody who I was working with the other day, and he was giving me this amazing answer. He's been a manager for like 20 years, and he was giving me this amazing answer in a mock interview that, one of the hardest things he's ever done was he had to lay this woman off, and it was really stressful for him and for her. And then she ran out hysterical, and it was very upsetting, and yada, yada. I was like, Robert, we got to be careful with the word hysterical. That's a word you got to be aware of. So same thing in your videos yesterday. I saw some people talking about amazing lifestyles that they want to live. And you did a good job. No one talked about coming into engineering for the money, but I saw some people talking about, well, I can do this from anywhere and I can really relax. And I was super bored with what I was doing before. I have to change. All that might be true, but think about your wording and try to bring across that passion and professionalism, and every word matters there. So if lifestyle matters to you, that's great. You can talk about flexibility, but make sure you're talking about flexibility to do great work in places that matter. Or maybe you can talk about how you were unfulfilled in your last role, but don't tell me you were bored for 5 years, because I don't want to hire somebody who's bored for 5 years, because how quickly are you going to get bored of my job, right? So details matter. So just a few tips from watching yesterday's videos, but I think 9 or 10 people uploaded their answers. You can all watch them all, and I'll show you how to find that. And awesome job to everyone who did. Oops, forgot to delete that slide. So our question today is, tell me about a time you've worked with non-technical colleagues. I think this is a very important question, and you're going to get this in a variety of ways, right? None of these questions that we're going over this week are necessarily questions you're going to get word for word. And if you practice your answer word for word, spit it out word for word, you pass the test. Right? That's not how interviewing works. Interviewing is about being really quick on your feet. And the more you can prepare, the quicker you can be on your feet. And this question is an essential question for an engineer because it's about cross-functional collaboration. Right? This question is about, okay, I got it. You're an engineer. Can you do more than just write lines of code? because I can hire a college intern to write lines of code. I need somebody who can work cross-functionally, somebody who can translate customer needs into technical specs, somebody who can understand business issues, somebody who can work with a marketer or a non-technical colleague to create a timeline and help that individual, help your colleague share that timeline with clients. When I'm asking you for your cross-functional abilities or your experience working with non-technical colleagues, what I'm really asking for is, are you more than somebody who can just write some lines of code? Can you think strategically? Can you inspire your colleagues to work well? So here's a few tips about answering this question. And again, just like last time, references throughout. Whoever drops in the reference on this image first gets the huge prize of me waving my hands and saying your name. It is coveted. I'm telling you, if you haven't had it done to you yet, it is very, very exciting. So let me know if you know what movies this is from, because you should. They made like $18 trillion. There you go, Chris. That's what I'm talking about. And Sabika, yeah, some superhero film. That's definitely what it is as well. This is from the Avengers series, specifically. Chris gets it. Matt, this is not Star Wars, but we can talk about that later. I'll try to bring some Star Wars references in for you tomorrow. So the first thing is, this must be told as a star story, right? I'm asking you about a time you worked with technical colleagues. What I don't want to hear is, oh yeah, in my boot camp, we actually did a project and I met a marketer. And we did that for about 3 weeks. All right, all right, thank you very much. I guess let me move on to the next question, right? It's not conversational. There's nothing I can latch on to. So you got to tell this as a star story. Tell me about the situation, the task, the action, result that led this to that really encompassed this whole experience. Make it a positive accomplishment, right? You're not exactly the end game superheroes who save the world from destruction, but I want you to make it sound like you were pretty close to it. I want you to make it sound that whatever it is that you did with your non-technical colleagues, you guys really accomplished something specific. And I want to know what it is that your team was trying to accomplish. And we'll talk about what to do if you haven't worked as an engineer with non-technical colleagues, because I know many of you are new to engineering, so you may not have that experience. We'll talk about that in a moment. But regardless, whatever story you're telling, explain to me what your goals were as a team, and explain to me the big result that you guys accomplished as the Avengers. But then, even though you're the Avengers, I want you to take your inner Robert Downey Jr., because he is the guy who solves everything, it seems, right? Robert Downey Jr., the guy with the big head over here, he's the main hero of the Avengers, he might argue. It's all about him helping people solve the goal. So here's what I mean by that. While I do want you to share what the team accomplished, I want you to use the I as much as possible. I certainly want you to share, well, our team's goal was this, but tell me what you did, not just what the team did. So if you're telling a story about, I was given this project through Flatiron School, and it was pretty cool because the marketers, we had to work with marketing team, and our goal was to create a new product that we can push out, and we accomplished that together, and we got 500 new users in a weekend. That's all well and good, and you did some good stuff. You shared what the team accomplished, and you shared the numbers, but I have no idea what your role was there. So while you can share what the goal was as a team, it's super important for you to tell me what I accomplished. Meaning, our goal was this. We had to create a project or a new product in a weekend and get about 500 users. I created the specs, worked directly with a designer and helped him design something a little bit better, set the deadlines, and actually coded using these languages in this amount of time with this number of lines of code, and pushed it out, and it had 0 bugs, and we scaled to 500 users in a weekend, right? Tell me what I accomplished is super important. So definitely share your team, right? You got your Dorothy, your Tin Man, your Scarecrow, your Lion, and we as a team made it to the end of the Yellow Brick Road, made it into the Emerald City, but I am the Scarecrow. Right? I am the Scarecrow, and I had to accomplish my own battles, and I had to contribute this to the team. So you are a member of a team, and you definitely want to say, this is what we accomplished. But more than anything, and so many people skip this in an interview, maybe it's because people don't like talking about themselves. Maybe it's because people think it'll make them seem crude or self-centered. Don't worry about that. I'm here to learn about you, Sharad, not we as a team, I'm here to learn about you. So talk about yourself. Now, the next one. Anyone know this comic book strip? It's one of my favorites. Just where it comes from. Drop it in the chat if you know it, and feel free to read it as I talk. There you go, Josh and Sean, the best. This is Calvin and Hobbes. So I like this clip because Calvin and the girl are working. Susie, was that her name? I think Susie was the girl in the comic strip. Calvin and his partner are working on this team project, and Calvin's talking about everything he accomplished, right? Everything he's going to contribute to their class project. And in the end, right before class starts, he begins writing his report. And so what I think is important when you share any answers about, tell me about a time you did this, or tell me about something new you're doing, is to share what you learned. Share how you would improve next time, right? So you can tell a story like, oh, my team and I, we have to do this. My specific role was accomplishing this. And I learned that the most important thing, what really made us successful as a cross-functional collaborating team, was this. And coming into your company, taking this skill of, maybe it's setting a clear deadline, maybe it's giving everyone super specific roles, maybe it almost doesn't matter what it is, but what did you learn? What is the philosophy that you gained so that you will never be stuck outside of the locker 5 minutes before class writing up the report again, right? What did you learn, and how would you approach it next time? Now, a specific tip to how to talk about this question, if you have not yet worked on a cross-functional team as an engineer, right? I know some of you just started coding 6 weeks ago for the first time. Some of you have been doing it passively for a couple of years. So everyone's all over the place, but I'll give a specific tip if you have not done this before. When you're in an interview and somebody asks you a question and the real answer is, I have not done this before, that's not exactly what you want to say. You want to be able to say, well, let me tell you about something very similar that I've done. And that's why I love this question, because you get to practice that jujitsu, and you get to practice making yourself sound competent and capable and a quick learner. So one thing you might do is to say, I saw someone's answers. They had worked in the hospitality industry. I think they worked at a hotel before. And so let's say, I don't know this about this person, but let's say they just started to code and they've never really worked as an engineer on a cross-functional team. Maybe she might answer, well, thank you for the question. I'm actually going to tell you about a time I worked with a really big cross-functional team in hospitality. And our goal was to build out a system that'll help guests check in a lot faster. And I was on the client services side, and I was actually working with engineers to accomplish this. So what I did was create a spec and work with the clients, understand the design. I went to 500 customers and got their opinions on it. And then I went to the 3 engineers on my team and I told them, hey, it needs to look like this. Here's the deadline. And I managed this entire project. And in the end, in about a month, just a team of 4 of us were able to put this thing together. And actually the hotel manager loved it so much that she promoted me within 6 months, right? You take that example of a time you've worked with engineers on the other side or with a cross-functional team at all and say, I can handle cross-functional work. I know you're taking a risk on me, right? Remember what we talked about yesterday. You've got to admit that whoever's going to hire you is taking a risk on you. Admit it. Because once you admit it, then you can move over that objection and say, all right, how am I going to conquer that objection? I'm going to tell them that sure, I'm new. And sure, I haven't worked with non-technical colleagues as an engineer before, but I've got this. Here's an example of how I can do this. So Sean asked, what about explaining a struggle job hunting a year after a boot camp? That's a great question, Sean. So let me finish this up really quickly, and then we can talk about that. But I think that's a really important question. So here's what's going to happen next. So if you don't have a Riveter account yet, it's totally free, always will be. You can log in and create one. You'll find the question of the day if you go here. So you want to be in the questions tab. You want to be in by industry. You want to click in boot camps. And this is what was not working for a couple hours yesterday. It's working now, I promise. You want to click the second question, tell me about a time you worked with non-technical colleagues. When you click that, a screen like this pops up, just has a different question on there. You're going to click record. It's a small white button in the middle. You're going to finish recording. Click this add target roles button. That allows you to say that you're an engineer with X number of years experience, and will help people give you more accurate feedback so that if they know your background a little bit, it's very important. If you didn't do that yesterday, you can go in and do that today. And in the end, all your answers are default private, but specifically for this exercise, so we can give each other feedback, tap this button, make it public and save so people can give you feedback and improve. And then later, if you want to, you can make it private again. So you just have that in your record so you can look at it forever. If you want to see how some people answered yesterday's question, and if you didn't get to answering why did you decide to become an engineer, same thing, questions by industry boot camps, and you can click see others answers. And you'll see all these people who answered. You can click in, you can watch Miranda W's answer, and you can see some of the feedback that she received from a few different people. So it's a nice way to learn and learn a little bit before you then go in and practice your answer yourself.